We're in Wootton Bassett in Wiltshire this evening, the town which has become synonymous with our war in Afghanistan because it's through the high street of this town that our dead are repatriated. Welcome to Question Time. With me tonight, General Sir Richard Dannett, until very recently head of the British Army, now advising the Conservatives on defence. Bill Rammell, the Armed Forces Minister. William Hague, Shadow Foreign Secretary. The former leader of the Liberal Democrats, Paddy Ashdown, who was the United Nations High Representative in Bosnia. The leader of the Anti-War Respect Party, Salma Yaqoob. And the broadcaster and former editor of The Mirror, Piers Morgan. Good evening. Just before we start, I'd like to welcome as well an international audience watching this programme on BBC World and the armed forces stationed around the world, including in Afghanistan, who are watching on the British Forces Broadcasting Service. Let's take our first question tonight. It comes from Brenda Hibbard, please.
Following the announcement of a tax on bankers' bonuses in yesterday's pre-budget report, should the money be diverted to increase bonuses for servicemen and women on active duty?
Well, I, for one, am a little tired of politicians' crocodile tears when it comes to our serving soldiers. They're quite happy to cheer them on into war, but not so happy to support them in the way that they need to be supported, and certainly very keen to abandon them when they return. I come from Birmingham. We have Selly Oak Hospital there, and I'm not surprised that more than half of the soldiers, when Gordon Brown visited in September, simply shut their curtains because they feel so let down. And I think it's an absolute disgrace that the Ministry of Defence is actually pursuing wounded soldiers in court to get back compensation. So the idea that you support them and value them is absolute nonsense. I'm a mother. I have 3 sons. I would be proud to have my sons defend this country. My issue, though, is why are we betraying the professionalism, bravery and commitment of our troops by sending them on an ill-conceived and doomed mission in the first place? The fact is, in 2003, we, the British public, were told that this war in Iraq was necessary because of weapons of mass destruction, which could potentially hit a British target in 45 minutes. We were told to trust our politicians and to trust in the professionalism of the army in carrying out what needs to be done. And moreover, that our army would be met with open arms as a liberating force. Were we not told all of these things?
But Afghanistan...
I want to make that analogy. And Sir General Dannett has sat here tonight and admitted we did not understand the complexities looking back now. Yeah? So it's the politicians, and I can see a consensus here. Now, if these guys got it so wrong then, what's changed? And in fact, Afghanistan is even more complicated than Iraq, and I, for one, do not trust in their judgment. We need to have an open debate, and I really wish it wasn't as skewed as it is, but I would like to make the point that we have to analyse what's happened over 8 years. So at the beginning of a war in Afghanistan, in 8 years, I'll tell you what we've got: 237 British soldiers killed, hundreds more horribly injured. We can only give estimates because nobody really bothered to count since 2001, but estimates range up to 35,000 Afghan civilians killed. And after all of this and all the billions of pounds, only 30% of the country is under the control of Western troops and a government which even Obama and Brown admit is thoroughly corrupt. Is that a price worth paying? Of course not. And I have to make a really important point, because everybody here is being dishonest about what the nature of the violence is. Most people here are being told, and we hear the same spin, we're there so that we are safe here. The impression being given that we're fighting those Al-Qaeda fanatics so that we can subdue them so that we're more safe here. I tell you what the reality is. The bulk of the fighting is due to the fact a significant section of the Afghan population, not all, but a significant section, see our troops, as the Iraqi people did, a portion of those people, not as liberators, but as invaders. They are fiercely tribal, fiercely proud of their nation, and that's what this fight is about. That's why we're seeing the attacks increase.
Yeah, but
when the generals tell us that Al-Qaeda is virtually gone from Afghanistan, that's what American generals said in May, but we're seeing an increase in attacks. That's because there is dishonesty from our politicians about what our troops are being asked to do.
Salma, the one... Okay.
I'd like to say that I really agree with Salma, and I think a lot more people agree with that too. But my question is, we're sending in more troops, America's sending in more troops, most of our soldiers are dying from suicide attacks and improvised explosive devices. Aren't we just throwing in more troops in the hope that something will get solved?
Good, we'll hold that question and we'll come to it with a question from somebody that I've got here. Yes, you sir, with the orange on, yes, in the white shirt.
I think Salma is absolutely right. These are basically a tribal people. If we were able to fast forward 10 years, assuming that we've withdrawn in the next 2 or 3, they will again be tribal people. They may be led by the Taliban, they may not.
All right.
But we won't have achieved anything.
Thank you. And the woman here.
I completely agree with Salma as well. The issue is not with the politicians lying, is not with our soldiers with not having enough resources. The issue is with Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, who are in Afghanistan. So why am I seeing dead soldiers in my high street? The Al-Qaeda is not in my high street. Why are there dead soldiers there?
This week, Hamid Karzai has said that Afghanistan cannot support its own security forces for another 15 to 20 years. So should we now expect the UK to continue providing troops and training until then at our cost?
Paddy Ashton.
Allow me just to say this. I mean, I don't agree with Selma, self-evidently, but I do admire enormously the way she puts her case. And she doesn't make your life any difficult, David, any more easy, David, but it's not her job to. You're big enough to do that for yourself. However, I also recognise that the view she represents probably is held by a very large number of people in this country, maybe even, according to the opinion polls, a majority. And I think there is a real burden that rests on the government to explain this better than they have done and to explain to us that we have a strategy.
With all respect to Salma, who is a wonderfully passionate and eloquent articulator of their side of the argument, and I get it.
Whose side of the argument?
Of the side of the argument of the Afghani people.
Of the majority of the British people?
No. I don't think anyone here feels a lack of sympathy for the people in Afghanistan who have been suffering through this conflict.
You've been silent now for... do you want...
Well,
because let's just go back, because we have to end the programme. Just get
I
back
have
to
been
the
trying
point
to get to it, but I'm glad that you've asked me to come in now.
No, I'm not keeping you out deliberately.
Without it, we've seen what the consensus is here, and I'd like to take the focus back to Afghanistan and back to why are we there. And we've been told again and again it's so that we're safe from Al-Qaeda. American generals told us back in May Al-Qaeda is virtually non-existent, about 100 operatives left. So what is the fighting about? It is about people, a large section, not insignificant, of people who view our troops as invaders, and that's what we have to address. We do need to address Al-Qaeda. Coming to you about 9/11, I went to America to visit victims of 9/11. On Monday, 2 of my female relatives in Pakistan were killed by Al-Qaeda type terrorist attack. The one that happened in Lahore, where 34 other shoppers in a busy market were killed. So I understand the impact of terrorism. My point is this: we need to have a strategy which makes us more safe, not more at risk. And so we should be acting in a way which diminishes the threat. And Al-Qaeda, what they do is they prey on the grievances. There are legitimate grievances, but this particular group prey on that and then justify violence against innocent civilians in the West and also in countries like Pakistan, which are seen as allies of the West. We have to distinguish between them and the Taliban, who have odious politics. The majority of the Afghan people do not want to be ruled by the Taliban, but the same poll that you're referring to also show that the majority of Afghan people want to have a peaceful, negotiated settlement and would accept the Taliban as part of a wider coalition, and that is a recipe for peace. There is an alternative to war, alternative to sending more troops in, and we should be pursuing that process rather than sending more troops in a way which is going to make nothing good come, and us more unsafe, more bloodshed for our troops, more bloodshed for the Afghans, and actually not leaving us in a safe way.